Thank you for joining us tonight, Johnny, Graham began, his Irish lilt warm and inviting, like a fireside chat. It's been a whirlwind few years for you films, travels, the lot. How are you finding life these days? Depp leaned back, crossing one leg over the other, a small smile playing on his lips. He removed his glasses, folding them deliberately and placing them on the table beside the chipped mug. Life's a curious beast, Graham. One day you're sailing calm seas, the next you're in the eye of the storm. But I'm good, grateful, really. Working on some projects that feel authentic. The audience chuckled softly, a ripple of approval. Graham nodded, his eyes crinkling with that signature charm. Authentic, that's a word that follows you around. From pirates to your more indie roles, you've always marched to your own drum. Tell us about this new film. It's got a bit of that Depp mystery, hasn't it? Depp's response came smooth, laced with a hint of gravel in his voice. It's about reinvention, I suppose. Characters who hide in plain sight. Much like real life. He paused, his fingers tracing the mug's rim, avoiding the chip as if by instinct. A camera tightened on his hand, capturing the subtle glint of silver. Graham leaned forward slightly, his pen hovering. The small talk flowed easily at first. Depp spoke of his love for painting, the solace of music, even a light anecdote about jamming with old friends. The audience laughed at the right moments, their phones dimmed but ready. But Graham, sensing the rhythm, began to probe gentler edges. Family must ground you amidst all that. You've got kids who've grown up in the spotlight, how do you shield them from the glare? Depp's smile faltered for a fraction, his jaw tightening imperceptibly. He shifted in his chair, the velvet whispering against his jacket. Family's sacred, Graham. You protect what's yours. The world's hungry for pieces of you, but some things aren't for consumption. His tone was even, but his eyes flicked to the audience, as if measuring their hunger. A brief cutaway, in the control room, the producer exchanged a glance with the director, a subtle nod, keep rolling, this is gold. Graham persisted, his voice still polite, a velvet glove over steel. Absolutely. And your own upbringing, Kentucky roots, right? That must inform how you navigate fame's double-edged sword. It's all perspective, Depp replied, his words clipped now, a defensive edge creeping in. He sipped his tea, the steam rising like a veil. Fame's a thief sometimes. Takes your narrative and twists it. A micro gesture, his free hand clenched briefly on his knee, then relaxed, as if remembering the cameras. The interview eased into calmer waters momentarily, Graham asking about upcoming projects, Depp offering polished soundbites about creativity and resilience. But the air thickened, the hum of lights seeming louder in the pauses. Graham tapped his pen again, a personal beat, steadying himself and pivoted smoothly. Speaking of narratives, Johnny, your legacy in Hollywood is undeniable. Icons like you shape culture. But with that comes scrutiny, past roles, personal chapters. How do you reflect on those controversies now? Depp's posture straightened, his charm dimming like a clouded moon. Controversies? That's media shorthand for stories spun out of control. I've lived my life openly, Graham. Mistakes? Sure. But legacy isn't defined by headlines. He leaned forward, mirroring Graham's earlier move, a subtle power play. The wide camera pulled back slightly, capturing the narrowing space between them. The audience stirred faintly, a rustle of programs like dry leaves. Graham's expression remained composed, but internally, he recalled a similar interview years back, where a guest had cracked under pressure. He pressed on, his questions sharpening. Fair point. Yet, in the public eye, one's actions ripple outward. Your trials, literal and figurative, have sparked debates on accountability. Do you see a responsibility there, to address the impact? Accountability? Depp echoed, a sardonic note threading his voice. He set his mug down with a soft clink, the chip facing Graham like an accusation. Everyone's accountable to their own truth. The courts decided mine. But the court of public opinion? That's a kangaroo setup, rigged from the start. His words were declarative, aphorisms honed from experience. Visibility isn't vulnerability, it's a weapon wielded by others. Graham nodded slowly, his pen still now. The friction built, the dialogue a dance of exposure and evasion. Privacy versus exposure, that's the crux, isn't it? You've spoken of feeling exposed, yet your platform amplifies voices. Where's the line between controlling your story and acknowledging the wounds it might inflict on others? Depp bristled, his breath catching audibly. Privacy is the last bastion, Graham. Lose that, and you're adrift. As for wounds, I've got my share. Inherited, inflicted, the works. But privilege? That's a word thrown around to diminish pain. A flash of vulnerability, his eyes softened for a beat, a distant memory surfacing, perhaps a childhood echo, before hardening again. The small audience exchanged glances, a few phones surreptitiously raised. Offstage, a crew member whispered into a headset, the sound barely audible over the light's hum. Graham's tone firmed, transitioning from curiosity to a moral frame. He leaned in, his voice incisive yet measured. It's that tension, privilege and trauma coexisting, that fascinates. A person can be both architect and victim of their narrative. But humility in the face of consequences, doesn't that demand reflection? Especially when gendered standards tilt the scales. Gendered standards? Depp countered, his voice rising a notch, contempt edging in. That's the shield for selective outrage. Authenticity isn't performative, it's raw. I've been raw, and it's cost me. He paused, a swallowed laugh escaping his bitter air. The camera mid-shot caught his fist tightening on the armrest. The ethical pivot deepened, Graham's questions now pointed arrows. When you frame it as theft of visibility, Johnny, do you recognize the burden that places on those without your platform? Accountability isn't just personal, it's communal. Humility might mean owning the spectacle, not just surviving it. Depp's responses grew sharper, deflections laced with reversals. Ownership? The media owns the spectacle. I'm just the unwilling star. Microbeats punctuated. After one line, he glanced at the chipped mug, as if seeing his own fractures reflected. The studio inhaled collectively as Graham delivered the culmination, his words a moral judgment wrapped in empathy. But in chasing authenticity, have you considered if your truth, curated or not, eclipses others' pain? Privilege doesn't erase wounds, but it does amplify echoes. Isn't it time to step back from the performance and face the real consequences? Depp's breath quickened, a sharp intake slicing the air. His hand gripped the chair's arm, knuckles whitening, the velvet creasing under pressure. The microphone wire tensed with a faint twang, the light's hum swelling in the sudden silence. His chair scraped back an inch, poised on the edge of eruption. Depp leaned forward, his voice low but searing, each word a deliberate strike. Consequences, Graham? I've faced them. Courtrooms, headlines, exile. What's left to face when the world's already carved you up? His fingers twitched toward the mug but stopped, as if touching it might shatter more than porcelain. The microphone wire sang faintly with his movement, a taut hum underscoring his words. Graham's expression remained steady, but internally, a memory flashed, a politician storming off the same set years ago, leaving a void that fueled weeks of headlines. He tapped his pen once, a grounding beat, and responded, his tone still measured but edged with resolve. I hear you, Johnny. But consequences aren't just personal, they ripple. To fans, to survivors, to those who see your story as a mirror. Doesn't that demand a pause, a reckoning beyond defiance? The audience stirred, a soft rustle of programs and stifled gasps. A cutaway, in the control room, the producer whispered urgently into her headset, stay on him, mid-shot, don't miss this, her eyes locked on a monitor. Offstage, a lighting tech exchanged a glance with a sound engineer. Their faces taut with the thrill of unscripted drama. Depp's laugh was sharp, a blade wrapped in velvet. A reckoning? That's rich. The world doesn't want reckoning, it wants blood. Mine, hers, anyone's. You call it a mirror, I call it a cage. He stood abruptly, the chair screeching against the polished floor, the sound echoing like a gunshot. His jacket swung open, revealing a glimpse of a faded scar on his collarbone, the recurring motif of his fractured past. The wide camera pulled back, capturing the space he now commanded, a lone figure against the warm light's glare. Graham rose halfway, a reflex of civility, his hand gesturing faintly to calm. Johnny, please, let's talk this through. No one's caging you here. His voice softened, but his eyes held firm, a journalist's instinct to probe warring with a host's need to salvage. Depp paused, one hand on the chair's back, his rings catching the light. For a fleeting moment, vulnerability surfaced, his shoulders sagged, and he glanced at the chipped mug, as if it held answers. You don't get it, Graham. Talking doesn't uncage you. It just tightens the bars. Then, with a slow exhale, he straightened, his charm replaced by something colder. I'm done performing for this. He turned, his boots clicking on the floor, and walked toward the stage's edge, the microphone wire trailing like a severed lifeline. The audience erupted into murmurs, phones now openly raised, capturing the retreat. A woman in the front row whispered to her neighbor, her words lost but her wide eyes screaming spectacle. The close camera swiveled to Graham, catching a flicker of fatigue in his brow before he masked it with a professional nod. We'll take a moment, he said to the audience, his lilt steady despite the chaos. Stay with us. Offstage, Depp disappeared behind a black curtain, the fabric swallowing him like a void. The control room buzzed, the director barking, follow him, get the exit shot, but the cameras stayed fixed on the empty chair, its velvet still dented from his weight. The chipped mug sat alone on the table, steam long gone, a relic of a conversation that had burned too hot. Graham sank back into his seat, his pen tapping twice, a rare double beat, betraying his unease. He glanced at the audience, offering a wry smile. Well, that's live television for you. A few nervous laughs answered, but the air felt heavy, the hum of the lights now oppressive. A production assistant's whisper cut through, cut to commercial in 10, 9, the wide shot lingered on the set, the empty chair a silent accusation. In the minutes that followed, the studio became a microcosm of aftermath. Crew members darted across the floor, adjusting cables, their whispers sharp with gossip. The audience, released from their seats, spilled into the lobby, fingers flying over screens as they posted clips and hot takes. Hashtag Depp walkout trended within the hour, X ablaze with fragments of the exchange. Privacy is the last bastion, the world wants blood. Commentators dissected Depp's scar, the mug, the scrape of the chair, weaving narratives from crumbs. Some called it a meltdown, others, a stand for authenticity. A viral post read, Johnny didn't walk out, he escaped. Backstage, in a dimly lit green room, Depp stood alone, his reflection caught in a mirror. He touched the scar on his collarbone, a gesture absent of cameras but heavy with memory. A knock came, his manager, urgent, phone in hand, already fielding calls from outlets hungry for a statement. They're saying you cracked, Johnny. We need to spin this. Depp's eyes met his own in the glass, and for a moment, he saw the boy from Kentucky, not the icon. Let them talk, he muttered. They always do. In the studio, Graham lingered on set, reviewing notes as the crew reset for the next segment. The chipped mug was cleared away, replaced by a pristine one for the next guest. He overheard a stagehand, never seen Norton push like that. Reckon he meant to break him? Graham's pen paused, a flicker of doubt crossing his mind. Had he crossed a line, chasing truth into spectacle? He recalled Depp's fleeting softness, that glance at the mug, and wondered if he'd misread the man's wounds. The fallout rippled beyond the studio walls. On X, fans rallied with hashtag #StandWithJohnny, painting him as a victim of media overreach, while others branded him entitled, his walkout proof of unchecked privilege. Critics praised Graham's incisive questions, but some accused him of ambushing a guest for clicks. A feminist thread dissected the gendered subtext, Depp talks of cages, but who's really trapped when men's pain drowns out others? The chipped mug became a meme, captioned with quips like, the real star of the night. Days later, Graham sat in his office, scrolling through the digital storm. A message from his producer popped up, ratings through the roof. Want to invite him back? Graham's fingers hovered over the keyboard, his pen idle on the desk. He thought of Depp's scar, the way it peeked out like a secret begging to be told. He typed, not yet. Let it breathe. Depp, meanwhile, retreated to his London flat, sketching in a notebook, the lines jagged and dark. He avoided X, but his manager relayed the chaos, lawsuits threatened, apologies demanded, support swelling. A text from his daughter arrived, you okay, Dad? Saw the clip. He stared at it, the vulnerability from the studio resurfacing. He typed back, "Just being me, kid. Love you." The scar itched under his shirt, a reminder that some wounds never fully close. The interview, though fleeting, became a cultural flashpoint, a mirror for debates on authenticity, accountability, and the cost of visibility. The chipped mug, now retired to a props closet, held no answers, but its imperfection lingered in memory, a symbol of the fragile line between performance and truth. For Graham, it was a reminder of the power in his questions, and the weight they carried. For Depp, it was another chapter in a narrative he could never fully control, no matter how far he walked.